Hey scholars, welcome to section 10.3, and today we're looking at how should we manage grasslands and sustain grasslands long term, and kind of what do grasslands do for us as a whole as well as the world. First, let's define a few terms. The first one is rangelands, and these are unfenced grasslands in temperate or tropical climates that supply forage or vegetation for grazing or browsing animals. Another definition is the definition of pastures, and these are just managed grasslands that are sometimes fenced in or planted with domesticated grass for their forages, so that way cattle can graze and thrive. So those are a few different just types, looking at the difference between pastures and rangelands. But rangelands have been overgrazed, which means that they occurs when too many animals graze for too long of a time period, exceeding carrying capacity of that ecosystem, where that ecosystem then slowly degenerates. But there's some important services of grasslands first that we're going to talk about. First of all, it's soil formation. They have one of the best areas for soils, their best nutrients, the best place for growing crops, which is pretty much why we've cleared out some of those lands in the first place. Another one is erosion control. They provide lots of erosion control, lots of grasses holding the soils. Nutrient cycling, big on that because of the way that they are, because of all the plants that inhabit the grassland areas. Storage of atmospheric carbon within the biomasses. Lots of grasses equals lots of biomasses, which holds lots of carbon. And then also they maintain biodiversity as well, being a very unique ecosystem. As far as overgrazing of rangelands, it reduces grass cover, which then leads to more erosion by soil and water and wind. And then soil becomes compacted as well, because a lot of times the dirt hardens and cattle are walking over it, trampling on it, kind of compacts it down very much as well. And then enhances invasion of plant species that cattle won't eat, so invasives that come in, different weeds that have different thorns and bristles on them that really cows will not graze upon. One of the case studies is the Malapai borderlands, and it is a success story, and I'll read you just a little bit of what the book says about it. And it says, the Malapai border is an area on the border between southwestern United States of Arizona and New Mexico, where ranchers, with the help of federal government, not only allowed overgrazing for more than a century, but also fought back fires and kept the grasslands from burning. Consequently, trees and shrubs replaced grasses, the soil was badly eroded, and the area lost most of its value for grazing. Well, since '93, ranchers, scientists, environmentalists, and government agencies have joined forces to restore native grasses, and also animal species to those areas, and land managers conduct periodical controlled burns on grasslands, and the ecosystem has now been largely reestablished. So that's the success story of the Malapai borders. Here's just an example of natural capital degradation, overgrazed and lightly grazed rangelands. This is an example of overgrazed. There's no soil really, it's mostly sand and now really compacted. Plants have moved in that really cattle will not eat because of how coarse they are, because of burrs and different thorns and things and thistles. The cows will not eat them. So there's just a couple examples there. We can manage rangelands more sustainably. One way is called rotational grazing, where you're moving cattle or moving herds around and doing it kind of systematically. So that way, okay, the cows eat this spot one day, the next couple days they feed over here, and then the next couple days they feed over here. That way it allows those times for those plants to regenerate and regrow. That's what we call rotational grazing. And one area that we're going to talk about is riparian zones. I'm going to explain that in just a second, what a riparian zone is and why it's important not to impact that very much at all. Suppress growth of invasives by using herbicides, mechanical removal, like literally pulling the weeds, controlled burning, or even controlled short-term trampling, where you're just kind of running and moving cattle around to kind of break and wear down and kill those weeds by just trampling them with hooves. We can also replant barren areas like they did in the case study with native grasses, apply fertilizers if need to. That might run off a little bit, but as long as the plants are, they should soak it up and not allow very much runoff, and then reduce soil erosion as well by replanting. That would reduce soil erosion as well. All right, so one of the case studies is the American Southwest, and we're going to get to riparian zones. I haven't forgot about it in a second, but the case study is grazing and urban development of the American West, and it says the cows or condos is the question mark in the book. And since 1980, a lot of people have moved to the American Southwest, like Austin, Texas. Texas is a big state to move to. My sister just moved there. And if you tell me where she moved, which city, Austin, Texas, I'll give you an extra credit bonus stamp. But a lot of people are moving that way, and a lot of that is you're seeing urban sprawl kind of happen within those cities, which is kind of taking the place of areas and of rangelands for cattle to be raised, and that's still a huge industry right now. And land trust groups are basically groups of people that come together and are trying to limit land development or protect the land from being developed, so that way the ranchers can stay on there. It also can maintain that native habitat without just building it up and bulldozing over it and making condos and apartment complexes. So literally, land trust groups have come in. This is government as well as other companies, and paid ranchers for conserving easements. So basically saying, hey, even if you stop ranching or raising cattle, you're not going to sell it to some sort of developer. That way it'll stay natural and wild, and that's what a land trust group does. Reducing the harmful environmental impact of herds, again, rotating cattle away from riparian zones, and they're teaching ranchers to do better ranching methods, using less fertilizers and less pesticides, and operating your ranch more economically is really basically what we've really tried to promote down there in the American Southwest. And let's talk about what a riparian zone is. A riparian zone is basically a buffer zone on both sides of a waterway, a river or a stream that's flowing through a range or rangeland. And it's important to keep this intact because that stops a lot of runoff from occurring and a lot of turbidity entering the water or particles entering the water causing high turbidity. You can see this is two areas of where there's a nicely well-defined riparian zone where there's not, where cattle are literally trampling, defecating, causing sediment to intrude into the waterway there, and that's causing major damage to not only the land but also the water system and people downstream from this site as well. And that brings us to the end of rangelands and grasslands. We'll take a look at some other stuff next time. See you guys.